On the third Thursday of every month, dozens of veterans, most from World War II, gather at the Germantown Baptist Church for a luncheon presentation, sponsored by Forever Young, a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to honoring veterans for their service. Diane Height is the founder of Forever Young. She sees these meetings as therapy for the men and women who may have repressed their memories of events that happened over 70 years ago.
They get such a healing from just being together. I don't know what it is. I don't know if healing is the right word. There's just comfort. Maybe that's the word. They get a comfort from being with one another and just knowing that they went through combat and they understand it. There's just something special about them being together.
Diane knows from personal experience how valuable these gatherings can be to veterans and their families. Her father came home from World War II an alcoholic.
My family suffered because of his alcoholism, which I have no doubt it stemmed from World War II. And I think a lot of families have suffered because of the war and not realized it. And so I think it's interesting that I can take the pain of what we went through and use it to bring healing to not only our World War II veterans, but to their families. And so it's just amazing how you can take bad and bring it or make it into something good.
In the crowd today are mostly World War II veterans, with a scattering of vets from Korea and Vietnam. They greet one another like old friends who have shared a common history. And they talk about everything from the weather to old war stories. Diane began these meetings as an outgrowth of Forever Young's founding mission of granting World War II veterans wishes to return one last time to their battlefields. Every year, Diane accompanies veterans on trips to Washington, D.C., Normandy Beach, or Pearl Harbor. She's even taken veterans halfway around the world to return to Iwo Jima. So far, Forever Young has made over 20 trips, granting the wishes of dozens of World War II veterans who find a sense of closure in the forests of Belgium or the sands of Normandy. Earl Williams was a 21-year-old staff sergeant in the Army Engineers when he came ashore on Utah Beach with the third wave of invasion forces on D-Day. 71 years later, his daughter convinced Earl to go back to the battlefield.
I was afraid of how I would act, emotionally, because I can get to thinking about it and talking about it and almost tune up, even now, and that's as long as it's been. And to see it again, it just completely changed. I'm sure glad I went that time. I sure am.
Every one of these veterans has a story. This is Willie Phillips. He flew on B-17s and B-29s in both Europe and the Pacific, but he doesn't remember any of it. A piece of shrapnel in his brain left him with amnesia. When he came home from the war, he didn't even recognize his own mother.
But he had all these holes in his memory. Do you know he met a man here that went through training with him? So he and his wife and the guy that he went through training with and his wife, they went out to dinner, and he sat down and told him about training, and he's like, yeah, you got a B-29, and he said, you went here, and he started filling in some of the holes in his memory.
At today's meeting, the veterans are participating in a talent show. But the entertainment and the hot lunch is just a backdrop for the real purpose of these meetings. The opportunity to bring old warriors and their families together before the memories fade forever.
I like to say, as you throw a stone into a pond and you just see the ripple effect, that's exactly what happens with Forever Young. You'll see it in the healing in the lives of our veterans, and then it just trickles out to the family members and to the community, and it just goes on and on and on.
On a Tuesday afternoon, history students from Lausanne College School are setting up equipment to interview World War II veteran Eddie Spencer. As a private in an artillery battalion, Eddie spent nearly 3 years fighting across North Africa and the length of Italy. Today, he will share his memories with these students and make history come alive as part of the Chapman Wood Oral History Project at Lausanne.
You know, the historians can tell us a lot of the big ideas, and the historians can tell us how we should think about these or how we should remember these stories. But the oral history interviews give us minute details or really personal details, and also kind of show you the big picture aside, how these events affected, they affected real people. When you talk about the bravery and you talk about the sacrifices that people had to make, here's a very real one. It drives home the messages that we try to communicate to students in a way that's really beyond us. So these interviews, I think, not only they can be potentially cathartic experiences for the veterans, they're learning experiences for our students, but for the families of those being interviewed, they're priceless artifacts.
Veterans from every conflict, from World War II to the present, have been interviewed. And the program has recently expanded to include the oral history of the Civil Rights Movement. In addition to being a valuable teaching tool, these interviews are submitted to the Library of Congress, where they are archived and can be viewed online, preserving this priceless oral history before it is lost to time. Here's a brief excerpt from one of last year's student productions.
They drafted me when I was 17, and I didn't say nothing about going to war or anything like that, but I went because that's what I had to. But after I've been what I seen and what I seen over there, they called me back again, I'd go right today.
For me, thinking about my friends is what got me through it. Because for me, going to war, it wasn't, oh, let's protect America. It was more, these are my brothers, and these are the guys, they're watching my back, I've got to watch theirs, or if there's a weak link, it all falls apart.
You were very brave.
Huh?
You were very brave.
No, I wasn't. They said, I promise you I wasn't. I just did it because they told me to.
When I seen over there how they destroyed the people, killed the people, destroyed the land, stuff, I didn't want it to happen here. That's why I said I'd go back again, in my age.
Eddie Spencer is talking about the battle in Italy, where he earned a Silver Star. Russell Williams feels that the experience of shooting and editing these interviews makes his ninth graders not just better history students, but better citizens.
I was just expecting it to be like a normal history class, get the facts, you take a test and move on. I was not expecting anything like this.
I didn't know that much about the Vietnam War, which the veteran I interviewed had been a part of, and so I not only learned about the plot points of that, like the evacuation of Saigon, which I had no idea happened, and he was there, and it was cool because I went home that night and I Googled it, and he said that he was there pushing helicopters off of amphibs, and I Googled it and I could see pictures of people pushing helicopters.
I learned a lot about how it was a hard journey for them, and you don't really see that a lot of the time when you just read about history, but now you could see all the emotions that they had to go through and how difficult it was to be a part of the war.
I said to someone, I said, these men are the backbone of America. And they said, oh no, they're the heart and the soul too.